Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage one of the 2022 Tour de France. It's finally here, and what an amazing stage one we have to watch. I hope you guys brought your flippers like the mermaid statue here on stage one, lining the coast of today's race through Denmark, because today it's going to be a difficult technical course for all the GC favorites here at the Tour de France, and of course for the riders wanting to win today's individual time trial. At 13.2 kilometers course today, it has so many obstacles. There's paint on the roads. The road's narrow. There's chicanes. There's little bridges going over the riverways on today's course. It's going to be absolutely nail-biter for all of the GC favorites racing in today's Tour de France. And it's not going to come through smoothly for every rider here at the Tour de France. Now let's get into the action, because it was really thick throughout today's race. All of the favorites wanted to start at the beginning of today's race to try to avoid the win, but they're not going to get that lucky. Like I said, it's going to be wet for everyone, bar the last two or three riders on today's stage who had just periodically some dry roads. Talking Tom Pidcock and Marc Soler from UAE Team Emirates got the best amount of luck in today's individual time trial. Now when the racing starts, Stefan Bissinger is out on the road. We'll see him get a little bit locked up with the back wheel, and up front crossing the finish line is going to be Trek Segafredo's Bach Mollema. Was the fastest time, about 33 seconds up on any of the early starters in today's course. Behind, Stefan Bissinger's having problems all over the place. He won't crash once, he'll crash twice throughout today's short 13.2 kilometers course. And folks, he's going to crash on both sides of his body and slide on his butt. He's going to have no place to sleep that's comfortable on the bed tonight unless he's sleeping on his tummy, because that was the only thing he didn't hit on today's 13-kilometer course. He had all kinds of problems out there. Behind, he's got Mathieu van der Poel from Albacete de Koenig, who's flying on the pedals, going from inside to the outside of every corner and almost rubbing the fences, and then powering on the pedals perfectly all the way to the finish line to put himself in the hot seat, up on best time here from Bach Mollema's. Now, when we go back and we start watching the favorites, it was Primoz Roglic that was still out there on the course, while Mathieu van der Poel was finishing crossing today's individual line. Primoz Roglic, who was hoping to avoid the wet roads with every other favorite here at the Tour de France. He's not having any luck, but he is flying on the pedals. Remember, he just got done winning Dauphiné 2 weeks before this first stage of the Tour de France. Now we see the Jumbo-Visma rider, the big GC favorite, first across the line. It's not good enough to dislodge Mathieu van der Poel. He's about 2 seconds off of the time of Mathieu van der Poel from Albacete Phoenix, but that's a solid time, putting him in second place here on stage one. Only problem is there's other riders still out on the course, and next to come up is going to be a herd of GC favorites with Vlasov, Geraint Thomas, and Jonas Vingegaard, the next three big favorites that are out on the course. Vlasov will come through about 17 seconds down on Mathieu van der Poel's time. Geraint Thomas is solid too, just around 15 seconds for Ineos. Looks like Geraint Thomas has brought some of his Tour de Suisse form over here to the Tour de France. If he can have some more luck here in this early first week of the Tour de France, we might see him playing for the general classification with that kind of 2018 form that we haven't seen in a long time. But Geraint Thomas looks solid today. Right behind Geraint Thomas, Jonas Vingegaard, who was having an amazing ride out there. Looked like he was glued to the road. Always fantastic on the pedals, applying pressure in the right sections and out of the saddle, sprinting as hard as he can to do some massive damage on the GC favorites. He'll cross the line almost identical to Primoz Roglic, his team leader here for Jumbo-Visma, but up by just about a half second to put himself into second on today's stage, right behind Mathieu van der Poel, just at 2 seconds. Now there's big favorites still out there to leave the course. We saw him sitting in the waiting room. It was Tadej Pogačar, Wout van Aert having smiles, and then Filippo Ganna leaving the start ramp. The Italian world double time trial world champion, he's flying out there. We see him having a little bit of correction in some of the corners where he'll set his bike up a little straighter to go across the painted line so he doesn't slip. I saw him adjusting with his computer just a little bit, but always putting out power onto the pedals. Now Filippo Ganna will cross the line. 5 seconds up on Matthew van der Poel's time to put himself into the hot seat. But Filippo Ganna doesn't have to wait too long because Wout van Aert's on course, and he's the next rider to cross the line. With 150 meters to go, Wout van Aert still has 15 seconds to go, and it only takes him 10 seconds to do that 150 meters, as he's the fastest rider at this point in time in today's individual time trial, up by 5 seconds on Filippo Ganna, the double time trial world champion. Now, Wout van Aert's time is looking solid at this point in time. When I was sitting in the NBC offices when we were shooting the Tour de France Stage 1 here, we all thought this is it. Wout van Aert's going to win because Tadej Pogacar, who was finishing right behind Wout van Aert, crosses the line 2 seconds behind Wout van Aert to put him up on all the GC favorites here at the Tour de France. Now, he's got seconds, like 8 seconds up on Jonas Vingegaard and Primož Roglic. Looks like he's carried that amazing form that we saw in Slovenia, and now we're seeing him continue it here at the Tour de France. It's going to be a big-time fight, but at this point in time, this early point in time on Stage 1, we see Jonas Vingegaard, Primož Roglic, Tadej Pogacar, all riding with fantastic form, only separated by less than 10 seconds. Vlasov still looking solid on the general classification. And Geraint Thomas is looking fantastic. Now, we saw, like I talked about, Wout van Aert's in the hot seat, and we got to wonder who back here on this Stage 1 can dislodge Wout van Aert. Well, there's some other competition still to leave because it's Wout van Aert's teammate back there, Christophe Laporte. He's throwing in some fastest times at the first time check, flying through the corners until finally he loses the back end and crashes on the left turn. Looked like to me he's just pedaling too hard through the corners. When it's this wet and slippery, you really got to coast through these corners. And Christophe Laporte was taking maximum risk trying to win today's individual time trial. When I was sitting there watching it live at NBC, I just couldn't imagine what Christophe Laporte and Jumbo-Visma were thinking at this point in time. Guys, Jumbo-Visma won everything at this Tour de France. There's no doubt about it. Jonas Vingegaard set a fabulous time. Primož Roglic set a fabulous time, and they're racing for general classification. Wout van Aert's in the hot seat, and Christophe Laporte is still throwing everything he can until he crashed himself on today's stage. Remember, when you're talking about Christophe Laporte and tomorrow's Stage 2 here at the Tour de France, he was supposed to look after Wout van Aert for the green jersey. Instead, he goes down. You got to ask yourself right now, if you're Jumbo-Visma, was it worth the risk to try to win the stage with Christophe Laporte? They thought it was. They want the whole pie here at the Tour de France. Now we're going to have to wait till tomorrow and later in these Tour de France stages to find out what the damage was done to Christophe Laporte. Now there's other GC favorites because it's Adam Yates flying across the finish line. He's down 18 seconds. The fastest time here for amongst the Team Ineos riders here on Stage 1. Adam Yates, COVID scare that he had at Tour of Suisse clearly hasn't affected his form because he's on spectacular form for the individual time trial of Stage 1 of the Tour de France and fastest of the Ineos riders. Danny Martinez, the other GC favorite here for Ineos, is about 35 seconds, if not 40 seconds, down on the general classification. So right now on Team Ineos, Adam Yates is looking the best of the riders, but Geraint Thomas is hot on his heel, and Danny Martinez is about 20 seconds back. Now back to the race, it's Yves Lampaert from Quick Step. The Belgium time trial champion from 2 years ago. He's putting on a display here, and he's going fast. We see some times, and he's in the green as he comes near the finish line with 150 meters to go. He's still got 15 seconds to go, and if you remember right, Wout van Aert had 15 seconds to go when it put him in the hot seat by 5 seconds. So now you know Yves Lampaert is going to be in the hot seat. He crosses the finish line 5 seconds up on Wout van Aert's time. Immediately we see Wout van Aert leave the hot seat, and he'll go over and congratulate his Belgian compatriot, who's now looks like the favorite to win here at Stage 1. Behind, there's still a few other favorites to go, but it's Jakob Fogelstein who's racing for general classification after his third at Tour of Suisse. He doesn't have a solid time, losing just about a minute on today's individual time trial stage. Lusenko, who crosses the line for Astana, same thing, just around a minute's time back, but we still got one more good favorite out there to hold us some drama here on today's individual time trial. It's called Tom Pidcock from Ineos. Tom Pidcock's flying through the corners, but when he crosses the line, he's still too far down to dislodge Yves Lampaert from Quick Step. The sole rider left out here, Marc Soler, the last rider to leave on the individual time trial course with about 600-700 meters to go. We see he's in the red, and that's when Yves Lampaert starts to celebrate from Quick Step. He celebrates as he knows he's taken the stage win here at the Tour de France. And guys, let me remind you, with the stage win on stage one, you get the yellow jersey and you get the green jersey here for the Tour de France too. Yves Lampaert was stellar. Now, I'll be honest with you guys. When I was at NBC watching it live, we watched all the favorites go. At that point in time, when Wout van Aert was in the hot seat, we thought that was it. Everybody around the world, I'm sure, did. And when we listened to the interview from Yves Lampaert, he'll tell you the same thing. There's no way he thought he was going to beat all the giants, the favorites to win this individual time trial. He was hoping at best to go top 10. And instead, he's wearing yellow to start tomorrow's stage 2 sprint stage here at the Tour de France. Now, I had to wait all the way till I got back at the hotel to really dissect Yves Lampaert's ride. And when I looked at it, guys, every time I saw him going through the corner, left, right, any part of the course that he was turning, with the exception of about 600 meters to go, he always had a gap between himself and the corner. And when he was exiting the road, same thing. He was never anywhere remotely near the fencing, and I gotta believe that was the difference. When you look at Mathieu van der Poel's TT, when he was cutting all the corners so tight and exiting so tight, same thing with Wout van Aert. And when you look at Filippo Ganna, where he was adjusting his position in the mid-turn when he's getting on the white paint, back there, it's Yves Lampaert who must have been doing it perfectly, because every corner he's coming through with at least 2, 4, 5 feet of gap between the inside of the corner or the outside of the fencing when he exits. He was beautiful when I went back and detailed it. And I'm telling you guys, I had to wait till I get to the hotel, like I said, because no one had predicted Yves Lampaert would be this spectacular on stage one. But you were. Congratulations, Yves Lampaert, for today's individual stage victory here at the Tour de France. Enjoy the race leader's yellow jersey. Now, tomorrow's race, when we're talking about the GC favorites, it was a tight race and exactly how we had predicted in terms of Tadej Pogacar being on fantastic form, Jonas Vingegaard and Primož Roglič having almost identical time here on the individual time trial stage. Adam Yates, Geraint Thomas had a solid individual time trial. And of course, Vlasov, not that bad at just under 25 seconds to Tadej Pogacar here when we're talking general classification for the fight for the GC victory here at the Tour de France. Other riders to lose time, though. Danny Martinez lost a little bit of time. Jakob Fuglsang, of course, lost some time. Enric Mas had solid time, but still lost a little bit more than you'd like to see out of any GC favorites. And then Bahrain Victorious, they lost time amongst their GC favorites with Jack Haig and, of course, with Damiano Caruso on today's race. But nobody lost any super damage that we wouldn't have already saw coming. The top GC favorites that can all-time trial, they're all still close to each other. And when we're talking about tomorrow's stage 2, we got to dissect Quick Step strategy, because they're wearing the yellow race leader's jersey with Yves Lampaert's, right? But they have Fabio Jakobsen that needs to win one of these early sprint stages so that Quick Step can justify not bringing Mark Cavendish here to the Tour de France. Jumbo-Visma, when I dissect their ride for tomorrow's stage, it's crazy now, right? They have Christophe Laporte, who crashed, so we don't know what kind of condition he'll be in for tomorrow's stage race when we go across that final bridge, and it's a 200-kilometer stage, so there could be stress and battles and tactical fights all over that whole 200-kilometer race. One thing's for certain about tomorrow's stage, if it's anything like today's individual time trial stage, it will be lined deep with spectators throughout the course, because today's individual time trial, they were 5 deep throughout the whole 13 kilometers, and it was spectacular turnout for the opening stage here at Tour de France, and I would expect nothing less up here in Denmark for tomorrow's stage 2. Going to be a crazy stage. Jumbo-Visma, who want the whole pie, they got a lot to think about. Christophe Laporte might be injured. They have 2 GC favorites with Jonas Vingegaard and Primož Roglič, who are riding fantastic. Wout van Aert, of course, wants the green jersey, so you know he wants points. And because he's only back by 5 seconds down on Yves Lampaert, if he can get himself a first or second on tomorrow's sprint finish stage 2, he can get himself in the race leader's yellow jersey here at the Tour de France. So Jumbo-Visma, you know when you see Christophe Laporte out there trying to win today's individual time trial stage that they're still going to go for yellow tomorrow with Wout van Aert. Keep an eye out, of course, for Lotto Soudal's Caleb Ewan, because he is the moneymaker when it comes to scrambled, dicey, dangerous sprint finish to the line here. The Lotto Soudal rider, nobody does it better than him from coming from behind. But the other rider to keep an eye out, Dylan Groenewegen for Bike Exchange. You know he's hungry for a win. He's been held out of the Tour de France for the last couple seasons because of the crash to Fabio Jakobsen and the suspension from the UCI. He's back at the Tour de France. He's already been winning against Fabio Jakobsen in Hungary. So now you know Bike Exchange are going to be 100% focused for Dylan Groenewegen to win tomorrow's field sprint on stage 2. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Today was deep and intense amongst all the favorites. Yves Lampart's victory today was amazing. Came straight out of right field. Nobody saw it coming and just knocked us all off our seat. Congratulations, Yves Lampart. Enjoy your time in yellow, enjoy your time in green, and enjoy your stage victory here from stage 1 of the Tour de France. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Stage 2 is just going to get more intense. So I'll see you on the next edition of the Butterfly Effect.